We all think we are perceived a certain way. We all think we look a certain way or are being read by other people in a certain way. The reality can often be something very different.
Welcome to the Success Times Happiness podcast, a platform dedicated to engaging discussions with inspiring individuals aimed at nurturing personal development. I'm Richard Thompson, your host, a father, entrepreneur, world champion ultraman, and passionate about all things high performance. Our mission is to empower both ourselves and you to unlocking our fullest potential, recognizing that this life is no dress rehearsal. While I may not have all the answers, this show serves as our collective journey to uncover them. Our guest today is Jen Swaine. Jen is a PR and marketing whiz. She flies the flag of community here on the Sunshine Coast and is a thought leader for public relations and storytelling generally. She is bold and unashamedly follows her moral compass and is just simply a great chat. Expect to learn why it's important for all of us to cultivate a brand, how we should use PR and marketing in our daily lives, how to build a brand from nothing, and how to cut through the noise and be different. This is a masterclass of PR and marketing, dovetailed with stories of Jen's life. Love this episode so much, and we hope you do too. Let's get into it. Jennifer Swaine, thank you so much for coming onto the show.
Thank you for having me.
You are a PR, marketing, comms whiz, and probably one of the go-tos here on the Sunshine Coast. You came here in 2010, so almost 1.5 decades ago. What drew you to the Sunshine Coast, and what does it mean to you?
My mum and dad actually relocated to the Sunshine Coast well before we moved up here. And when they retired, they'd lived in Narrabri and Hay, and Mum said, I'm never living in the country again. I want to find a beach suburb. So they relocated up here, and probably the furthest north that my husband and I had travelled in our holidays was Gold Coast. And when we came and visited them on the Sunshine Coast, we went, how did we not know about this incredible place? And we fell in love with it then. Subsequently, we had children. Would have loved to have relocated here sooner, but I was worried about where the coast was going as a region and what opportunities that would present for children. So we didn't make the move until 2010.
You're like woven into the fabric now in the community. What does it mean to you now after 15 years or that much work?
When we moved here, as I said, initially I didn't think that there was a lot of progress happening. So you've got to be part of the solution, haven't you? So I ingratiated myself, for want of a better word, into the coast because a rising tide floats all boats. If I can do my part to help the community and help the businesses in the region and make a difference with the skills I've got, then that's got to create more jobs for our kids and other people's kids to want to stay on the coast.
I look at you as a thought leader in public relations, in communications and marketing. To kick things off, why do you think it's so important for anyone, whether they're big business, small business, no matter what they are, to develop a brand, to continually develop a brand for each of us?
That's a really great question. And people, whether they realise it or not, you've got a brand. So it's not about necessarily deliberately creating one, although you should. You just have one. So because when you think about it, it's about perception. So how you perceive someone is how they're seen. And therefore that's their brand. So whether it's a student or a profession or a business, what people are saying about you is how you're perceived. And it's really important that if you want to have influence and impact or reach certain markets, that you curate that brand so that you reach those audiences and you relate to them.
You don't have to be a market leader, or you don't have to have a relative amount of following to need a brand. I think you're right. I think everyone needs a brand. And I think it's based on the premise that we all need a team to create something that bigger than ourselves. And therefore, everyone's got influence on others, whether it's your own children, whether it's your colleague, whether it's the kids at school, whether it's your colleagues at work. No matter where you are in life, no matter where you are in a business, you influence and impact others. And so, as you say, you're leading, and how people perceive you is the brand that you constantly cultivate.
That's exactly right. So as an individual, it comes down to what you say, what you do, what you wear, and there's no right or wrong. And I'm not suggesting that you have to dress a certain way or look a certain way, but if you're wanting to resonate with a certain audience, it's really, really important that you understand what they're looking for, but also remain authentic to yourself as well. But obviously bigger brands they've got to be polished and they've got to have all the brand attributes and everything that goes along with that in terms of reaching their target market or their demographic or their audience. But if you were talking just about an individual, everything you say and do is being interpreted by somebody else. So I have a saying when I do a session on personal branding called, or it's pretty much when you're in the jar, you can't see the label. And it's very true. We all think we are perceived a certain way. We all think we look a certain way or are being read by other people in a certain way. The reality can often be something very different. So, for example, I love getting on my John Deere on the weekend and I like using my chainsaw. And I think holding that chainsaw, I look like the Ryobi girl. The reality is very, very different when I happen to walk past a window or something, when I park the John Deere. But in my head, that's how I think I look. It's really important sometimes if you're wanting to say, why am I not hitting the mark with certain people, to maybe ask a friend or someone you trust and say, this is what I'm doing, why isn't it resonating, or why am I not getting cut through? And it's really, really important to be honest and to take honest feedback, because someone might say, well, did you know that your language isn't appropriate for the audience that you're talking to? Or, well, let's take you for a second, Richard. So imagine if you walked into court and you were in thongs and a T-shirt and shorts, which might be appropriate for some businesses to dress like that, or when people are out and about. How do you think the judge would perceive you? He wouldn't take you seriously. So we have to adapt our style and depending on the audience that we're resonating with or where we're trying to pitch ourselves. It's as simple as that. There's no right or there's no wrong, and it doesn't mean you can't be authentic, but you also have to be realistic around the results that you will get if you choose to ignore what your audience wants.
The authenticity bit is really intriguing, I find, because people, unlike your John Deere example, where you are feeling, let's say, and I'm not without any disrespect because I haven't seen you with the chainsaw, so I can't comment. I think majority of people would feel that they are being perceived worse than they think that they are. The authentic piece is challenging because people have an ingrained dislike for themselves, let's say, and therefore how could I be authentic because I don't like myself, as an example.
I think that's really, really true. We're our own worst critics, aren't we, in terms of we see photos and we say we don't like how we look there or how we're perceived. And I often say this to people when they're going to be public speaking, or they're for the first time they're maybe having an interview with someone, or they've got to present. And I generally, an audience doesn't want to see you fail. People don't want to see you fail. People want to see you do well. And I think when you embrace that, and yes, sure, there'll always be a minority of people that don't want to see you do well, but what do they count for? You have to put that to the side. And I think people embrace people that are authentically them, and it doesn't matter whether it's your hairstyle or your clothing or who you are. If you have a good heart and you're authentic and you're genuine, just own it and have faith and work on the fact that does it really matter what other people think if you're doing the right thing and you're being a good human in the process? Just keep doing what you do. The rest will fall away to the side.
The authenticity bit is like going on a first date and you be a different person than who you are. And then you've got two options here. They either don't like you, and you can obviously play this with outside of a first date, but they either don't like who you're portraying to be, in which case they could have, you don't know whether or not they would have liked the real you, or they love who you're pretending to be, and then you've got to pretend to be that person forever. And so you're in a lose-lose situation.
Well, you're so nervous you get it wrong, and the real you doesn't come out anyway.
Doesn't even come out anyway, exactly. So, whereas if you aren't showing up authentically in business or in life, then you're potentially attracting the wrong people. Whereas if you show up as a truly just who you are, and I think you have to take into those sort of cues. You can't use language if, you have to dress a certain way, let's say for court or, in the specific situations. But by and large, if you're always operating from a place of being genuine in that role, then those people who you're trying to influence, they will automatically and by virtue of what you're portraying, be attracted to you no matter what. And then they're your real people.
I think there's a lot of truth in that. It's the core of it is getting comfortable in your own skin to go, I'm okay, however, who I am and how I'm portraying myself. That doesn't mean you shouldn't work on yourself, because we've all been nervous and overcompensated, or we've all done things where we'd go, oh, I could rewind that or do it differently. But I think if you go in and be yourself, and I'm a big personality and I get passionate when I'm talking about small business and the things that I love, and that's sometimes too much for people. That's okay, and I'm okay with that, because I'd rather find the people that I align with, because whether it's in personally or in work, there's enough work out there for everyone. It doesn't matter there are people in your field that you're competing with. There's enough work for everyone. We are not going to float everybody's boat every single time. It just isn't realistic, and you have to be okay with that. I'm totally okay that I'm probably not everybody's cup of tea, but that's okay, you know?
How do you get okay with that? Because I feel like if you had 96 people who absolutely adore you and think you're the best, and you have 4 people who have some sort of discerning or dissenting position, and they're like, oh, not for me, or have a problem with you, it's like the currency of those 4 people's opinion far outweigh the 96 that are saying you're amazing.
Maybe when I was younger, look, a lot of things happen as you get older, you know, and an old boss of mine used to say, Jenny, the older I get, the less time I have for more people. It took me a while to work that out. I think, you know what, there's that saying that, you know, you don't worry what other people are saying about you is nobody's business, or not your business. You just have to let it go, because life's too short. You know, we have a finite amount of time here on this planet. If you don't choose to embrace all that is good in the world and be happy in doing what you want to do, then, and you're wasting it on those 4 people that maybe don't like you, how tragic's that? So, look, I just choose to get into that place. Does it, you know, if you hear that maybe someone doesn't like you or whatever, does it hurt? Of course it hurts. But at the end of the day, you have to let it go, because it's not, there's more people that are on your team or that like you than those that don't. You just have to learn to let it go, because you can't do anything about it anyway.
Yeah, I also feel like maybe the authenticity bit is stifled, because if you are being truly who you are, like cards open on the table, then, and those 4 people say, I don't like you, you got nowhere to hide. Like, you are fully naked in that situation. We're going, well, you know everything, or you know what I'm showing you, which may or may not be the entire story, but maybe there's a bit of fear in that. Whereas if you're hiding behind an image, or hiding behind trying to pretend you like this, or like different than who you really are, then at least if they don't like you, you can say, well, that's sort of like my avatar, or that's, you know, it's not truly who I am.
But, you know, there's a difference too between not necessarily being liked and not having and respect for someone. You can not like someone but respect them. So, and I can't think of any examples that come to mind, but it's okay if someone goes, yeah, okay, maybe I don't necessarily, they're not my cup of tea, but I respect what they stand for, who they are. So,
and a lot of that, I think, Jen, is that person being authentic.
Yeah.
Right? And that's where the maturity comes in. You go, yeah, look, you're not my cup of tea, but gosh, I respect you for being who you are.
Absolutely. And it's okay also to have those people in your team too that maybe you don't want to spend the weekend with, or you don't want to go to dinner with. But, you know, we have different, you know, we always have our core group in them, but does it mean that just because you don't want to then spend the whole day hanging with someone, you know what I mean? You just got to let those things go and go, you know what, they're fun to be around, or I like hanging with them for a limited period of time, but it's okay not to be the apple of someone's eye all the time. You just have to get on and find, you don't, and at the end of the day, you've got to be happy in yourself too. I could spend just as much as I love spending time out talking to businesses or other people or just hanging with friends, I'm just as happy sitting on my John Deere mowing lawns all weekend with my earpods on and mowing lawns. Yeah. I'm comfortable in my own skin and my own space, that I don't have to be around people all the time. And I think that's perhaps something that comes with maybe age or time, or getting comfortable in your own skin as well.
Have you found it in your professional history difficult to extract the authenticity out of clients when you're representing them individually?
No, that comes across maybe initially, right? So because people, a bit like dating, put on their best. I never did that. My husband probably disagreed, but I never did that. You know, when you first meet people, they're on their best behaviour, or they don't always also share with you their goals either to start with. And they might say, we want profile for the business, but maybe it's a profile they want for themselves. And you know what? That's okay. That's not a bad thing either, because depending on a person's aspirations or goals, but you have to get to the heart of it. What I do find is people say, but I don't have a story. Can I tell you, everybody's got a story. And there was one client I met with recently, and they were telling me about something innovative they were doing, just in general conversation. And then we caught up afterwards, and I said, remember when you told me about that? And I said, why aren't you promoting and talking about that particular thing? And they went, oh, we just do that every day in our business. I said, but it's not standard for the industry that you're in. And they went, do you think that's interesting? And we absolutely, it's interesting. So again, coming back to when you're in the jar and you can't see the label, because that was part of their best practice, they didn't see it as anything different or innovative, but in their particular industry it was. So sometimes it takes, you've got to extract the information, but you've got to ask questions. You've got to listen and you've got to ask questions. But it's the same in individual relationships. You have to ask questions to get to the heart of people, and you've got to be intuitive to pick up on where they're going and what they're saying, because you have to read a lot between the lines. And there might be some things that perhaps if they're wanting to increase their profile that you don't talk about, and that's okay. I can generally pull a story out of people one way or another.
I feel like the story is the crux of every sort of amazing connection with a human, or you trying to find influence, or you're influenced by someone else. It's the storytelling that's the most important, right?
You know, it absolutely is. But you think about it, when you read an article or a magazine, or you're listening to a podcast or something, it's the story at the heart of the people. What makes a person, what motivates them in the morning, what makes them tick, what's happened in their life. And I'm not always talking about tragic things that have shaped them. I'm just talking, it could be that, you know, they always wanted to be a pilot and they did certain things to get there. It's just understanding where, you know, where ideas come from. I love talking to entrepreneurs. I could do it all day long. Where all of a sudden you go, how did you think of doing that? And they go, oh, well, this happened and that happened. There's always a catalyst that happened that led to where they are today, and just pulling those stories out. And it just comes to questions, right? And probably my biggest regret is I didn't become a journalist, because I love the story. I love pulling out the asking the questions and finding out about just genuinely and authentically about people.
And is that what drew you to the industry in the first place, in terms of the PR bit and the comms bit?
Absolutely. I'm able to write well, and I write quickly. And the idea is, it's hard to explain, but I can be, if I'm thinking about a story, the words just appear. They just appear in my head, and I can very easily get words down on paper. I can, whether I'm driving or whatever, I see the story in front of me. I just love telling the story about individual businesses or people and what they've done, and sharing that news, because there's just so many of them out there, and people don't think they're interesting, but they are.
You've also launched a lot of really massive companies and businesses, like Airline here, and just like, and it's really a vast array of industry. And I imagine the CEO, or whatever you call it, the founder or the owner or the person who would normally be in the spotlight of that venture, sometimes they are happy to be there, and sometimes, as you say, like, their ego is almost like, in a good way, they need to be front and center and yelling from the hill. But other times, I'm sure the founder is the quiet mouse and is quite happy just to go, look, I've created this. I'm not in the public space. You guys do your thing. How do you cultivate authenticity for a company?
I'm just thinking back to a situation in recent years where I didn't realise at the time, but the particular CEO didn't necessarily like being in front and centre all the time. And in my usual style, I just went, oh, your sleeves need to be rolled up in this one, and I'm rolling the sleeve, and everyone's gone, because I didn't realise. But by the end of it, we had them doing things that they'd never thought that they'd do previously, because it was taking them on a journey that was safe. And because nobody, particularly if you're a CEO and you're high profile, you don't want to be made to look a buffoon, or because protecting your brand that you've cultivated to become a CEO is really, really important. So the last thing you want is someone damaging that, or putting you in a position where that could be damaged or potentially seen. But the job of a good PR person is to identify the risks, very quickly with what you're doing, and identifying opportunities and positioning the person so that it's, if they maybe say they were, and I'm picking something out of a hat here, if it requires them to be wearing a cowboy hat or something like that, that context is there, so that it's relevant, and you're not just doing something for a photo or something that's just going to be clickbait. You have to manage and curate that particular circumstance very carefully, and you've got to look at it with 360-degree views as well. So how's it going to be perceived by everybody else? So you have to run the risks, that are associated with doing anything very quickly through your head, so that you're managing that profile and the profile of the person or the brand or the company very carefully. That's really, really critical.
The language used and the tonality and the whole personality of a business.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen even on the coast where businesses start and it's cold. It's not as, I guess, free flowing. But then I don't know whether there's a key personnel change or that they've just developed with enough time to then really get into the jam of this is how we talk as a company, and it really flows nicely and it becomes almost like a personality. How do you help cultivate that? You could go any which way how the company talks and communicates to its clients.
So what you're referring to there is your brand attributes, and that's part of your brand strategy. So when you're basically, a lot of entrepreneurs launch a brand, or they go out and do the thing they do well, regardless of whether it's making biscuits or selling insurance or whatever it might be. And they might start off small, so perhaps they hadn't, they're busy running the business, so they haven't thought about that. Maybe they've got themselves a logo, but they haven't quite got everything together. And I've just done a couple actually in this last month where we've gone in and done the brand and marketing strategy and got things right, like the elevator pitch and what is that you're going to say? What are the brand attributes? And when I'm talking brand attributes, I'm thinking the best way to explain it is think Red Bull. When you think Red Bull, what does that stand for? High energy, excitement, that sort of thing. So every organisation has brand attributes that people relate to them. So Volvo's another one. Back in the day, people would say it's, safety is the first thing that comes to mind when you think Volvo. Back in the day, you would have questioned whether it was boring. They've changed that perception now, of course. Jeep's another one. What do you think of when you think Jeep? Go on, you're not.
Oh, sorry, Jeep Adventure, I guess.
Yeah, but back in the day, and there's actually someone here on the Sunshine Coast that bought a Jeep. Now, if you Google Jeep, the word lemon will generally come up with it. Now, I'm not suggesting in any way, shape or form that that's what Jeep is, but managing your brand and the brand attributes that go with it is very, very important. You want to be known for certain things. Again, Volvo safety, Reebok, Nike, all those sorts of things. The minute you say them, and the minute you say them, though, you know what they stand for. And it's no different to an organisation now, or any organisation, is that you have to run through what's your tone of voice. What do you want to be known for? How do we speak to customers? Who's our target audience? What are the locations? All of those things have to be mapped out and planned in a strategy that helps craft that brand and where it's going to go. And that's when you see those things come together, when they stick to that you'll actually see the tone and the language and the things they're saying publicly all of a sudden become aligned and sing.
Yeah, I like that. Being in the industry for such a long period of time, you've ridden the wave and had to adapt with the change of vehicles, let's call it, to take these communication pieces along. So that social media obviously is a huge part of that. Traditional media is still there, but where do you see it going forward into the future?
I'm very much, digital's here to stay whether you like it or not, but the good thing about that is it's measurable. So for every dollar you spend, if you choose to do paid digital, you should be able to see what results you're getting as a result of that. And I very much like you've got to be able to track results when you're putting money into something. For me, though, a very big part of what I do with my business partner, Heather, is PR and comms and managing the story that your brand tells, because that's very much, and making sure it's narrated so that people know what you do and how you get your message out there. So you can't have a great brand out there and get resonate with your audience unless you've got great imagery to go with it. So really focusing on digital assets, things like your video reels, video stills, all those sorts of things. And you need to have a great asset library that supports what you're doing to tell your story. There's no point doing a media release, one, if you haven't got news, but two, if there's no assets to go with it. So gone are the days where newspapers or online publications would send out a photographer. You've got to be providing good assets. And if you're sending something from your phone that you've sent your receptionist out to go and take a photo of, then you're wasting your time and money, because if you're not aiming for a good editorial image every single time to go with your media release, you might get picked up if it's a compelling story, but you want to increase your chances of getting publications, to run your story. So Good imagery and digital content is essential.
And if you've got all that, you're ticking all those boxes, and you're still not cutting through to your key market audience, where do you focus your attention to?
Look, you'd have to do a bit of a review to understand what it is you're selling, who you're selling it to, what your key messaging around that is. How have you launched it? Have you launched it? And to understand what your aspirations and your goals are, what does success look like, and then reverse engineer it to find out where they're going wrong. Because it could just be a product there's no demand for, but I can't see somebody going into business if they haven't, because most entrepreneurs these days identify, a market for their product. But you'd have to go back and have a look at what was going there. So that's probably an open-ended question, but you have to really look at what they're doing, understand where they're going wrong, or what they're not doing to understand where they're going wrong.
Okay, let's talk about publicly going wrong then. How does it look for crisis management with clients of yours? Given that now we are obviously 24/7 and open to everyone, and then something happens within a client's business that is not on brand, and you need to swoop in and try to rectify goodwill and brand assets.
It depends on what the problem is that's arisen and how public it is already as well. But again, making sure that the whole, that you've only got one spokesperson, that you, first of all, you understand what the issues are. And then depending on what the situation is on how you manage it, authenticity, but being honest and transparent also is really, really important. Don't start lying, weaving, ducking, all those sorts of things, because it's not going to do you any favours. But again, this one also depends on what the particular circumstances are, on how you manage that particular crisis. It's probably not answering your question here, but every situation is different depending on how explosive or diabolical it potentially is, and whether you can contain it in-house or, at a low level first, or whether you've got to go even broader than that. But then if you've got to go broader than that, having the comms plan that says this is how we communicate with our internal stakeholders, this is how we communicate with our external stakeholders, and this is what we're saying publicly. Being very clear on that, so that everybody in the organisation understands what we're saying and when we're saying it.
And have that plan before
Yes.
it goes to the fan?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I like that approach. Where are you headed?
Well, I've started up the comms people, and not just myself and a lady called Heather Mullins. Heather used to be the head of PR for Bonza, and that's how I met Heather when they were launching Bonza last year, and I was fortunate enough to work for the airport doing PR with Heather, and we got to know each other then. She finished up with them mid last year or late last year, and we started the comms people. So with a friend of ours who's a photographer and videographer, and together we do great PR with really good supporting assets.
It's almost a meta way of looking at it, because you almost have to take medicine out of your own advice when you're launching your own brand.
Isn't it funny? It's like the plumber that never gets around to
Yeah,
fixing
exactly.
his bathroom. It took us 6 months to do a video on us, and even then Pete voiced it over for us because we're so busy, you know.
Yeah. But you are N=1, like, you know what I mean? You have to be the front and center thought leader and implementer of all these principles.
Yes, yeah. Look, we do, and because we've got a photographer on the team, it's there's no shortage of assets. But the thing is, we like to do a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and we're starting to get it together. But then we'll go to a shoot, and we get right into the shoot and doing the PR, and then we go, did anyone get any behind the scenes footage?
Perfect.
And you go,
You need a good PR team.
Yeah, where's the person doing that for us? And we've done some really good shoots this year. We've been out to Mount Isa, and we did some great imagery that's just been picked up, and got that particular client a 2-page spread in the Qantas magazine based on the great imagery and the story that went with it. And that's, just proactively pitching to media using really, really good, strong imagery and the story that went with it. And Qantas magazine loved it, and it literally just hit out on the 1st of June.
Those scenarios, you almost need both. If it's just pretty pictures without a story, it's not going to be picked up. But if it's just a great story without the asset, it's going to be really difficult to be picked up as well.
9 times out of 10, you've got to have both, right? But there have been times where we've got great imagery, and Pete will be pitching it to the photo desk, and they'll go, we've got to have that imagery. What's the story? And we've gone, now we've got to do the story, work the story to go with it. There's always an angle, but great imagery, because your content is king. You've got to have the content. So really, really important that the imagery is there. But if the story's there, you've just, your chances go through the roof of getting it run.
What do you think if you're decreed all small businesses or individuals looking to increase their brand, what is the first step they can do? Is it take stock of what are they doing now, or is it finding their goal? What is their goal and working backwards?
I think it's really important to understand what is success. Any client we go and work with, what does success look like? Why did you call us in? Where do you want to be? Because they've got aspirations. They wouldn't have called us in if they didn't, and it could be to be the best widget maker on the Sunshine Coast or in Queensland or Australia, whatever it might be. But you've got to then start back then with, what does your branding look like? What does your marketing strategy and your comm strategy look like? What are all the things you're doing? Does your brand need a refresh, or have you even got a brand? If you haven't got a brand, we have to work on that. Then you do your comm strategy and your attributes and all those sorts of things that we talked about. But before you do anything, before you do any promotion, before you start posting madly everywhere, get your assets done. Like, put some money aside for good video content and good photos, and embargo some of those photos for media use only. So if you've got a news release, so that if you're using an image of you, whether it's a lifestyle shot or a headshot, keep some of those separate, because if you've then got something else newsworthy, you don't want to keep circulating the same images to the media time after time, because they want fresh content. So whenever you give them, when we give photos to clients, we go, these ones are media use only. Don't let the team use them on social media or anywhere else, because you want to keep from that photo shoot some up your sleeve. Of course, if you've got big budgets and you want to do photos all the time, you're very happy to do that. But if you've got a smaller budget, get the photos that you want, plan it out with your shot list and your run sheet for the day. Make sure you don't pick up a video camera until you know what's the purpose of the video, what is the storyboard, is there going to be a voiceover? Understand all those things and document it really, really well, so that when you go and you've got your photographer and your videographer in, that we manage this for clients, but make sure we don't pick a camera up until we know all those things, what the outputs are going to be, so that you maximise the client's dollar and get as much content as you can, so they've got it for a little bit of time.
That's such great advice. And you're so passionate about the Sunshine Coast and small business on the Sunshine Coast. It makes sense that you are, I guess, highly motivated, or at least there's a lot of drive for you to promote them.
I love it, right? I love it so much. But what I love is telling the stories of these incredible businesses on the coast. And I'm not saying that from a point of view where I'm looking for clients, because I'm absolutely not when I'm wearing that hat, because many of them are managed by other really good PR comms people on the coast. But telling their stories, seeing them on stage, we get over 400 applications in the Sunshine Coast Business Awards every year, and we only take 120 through to become finalists. And hearing their stories is just mind-blowing. There's a company, Grease Boss, and they were a winner last year, and I think the winner the year before. But the inventions that they come, and just when they're coming in for their interviews and you're talking to them and you're going, how did you come up with this idea? And Tim was telling me that, he knew someone that was nearly killed because of this problem that he'd found a solution for. And he then teamed up with someone and invented this. It's very hard to describe in a podcast, but basically it's a tool that measures grease in big machinery. But they're now selling that worldwide. And hearing about businesses like that, or Bridget Woolner from Cocoa Pod, who does incredible chocolate, just these incredible local people that then collaborate with other businesses to do great things on the coast. I want the world to know that the Sunshine Coast might be regional, but we absolutely punch above our weight when it comes to doing what we do compared to the rest of the world. We really are the entrepreneurial capital of Australia, and if you've only got to scratch the surface to see how many talented businesses that we've got here that do incredible things. The mattress company at Yandina, a business award winner last year, I don't know if you've tried their mattresses, right? But their mattresses are incredible, and they're here on the Sunshine Coast. You don't have to go to some of the biggest stores to buy mattresses when you've got someone here that really do incredible work just down the road. So, yes, I absolutely could talk about small business and what they're doing on the Sunshine Coast all day, because across 17 different categories that we've got in the business awards, from clean tech to festivals and events to experiences to hospitality to creative industries, professional services, they're all doing incredible things in so many different ways, and it's just mind-blowing. It really, really is.
Yeah, and I think that along the same lines, it's the rising tide that lifts all boats. And if everyone is supporting each other, then we're all going to benefit.
Absolutely. And when they do well, They employ more people. So, and, our kids might have to go away to have careers and things, but isn't it nice to know that as we're growing, some of these kids that may not have to choose to go away to have a career, that there'll be opportunities here. And I've got actually a client that is in the defence industry, and they were telling me the other day about, there's a demand for mechatronics because it's mechanical and electronics coming together, that there's this growing need for this particular career on the coast. And who would have thought that going back 10 years or 15 years that we would have been looking for mechatronics gurus. But isn't it great that we've got those industries and businesses here on the coast that are providing really great careers for young people that don't necessarily want to leave the coast, or perhaps they're not ready to leave the coast, but we're giving them good career options. And it's not just, and there's nothing wrong with tourism, but we're more than tourism. And I think that's exciting.
You make great points. And I think on the coalface, the business community, maybe in the last 10 years, have turned a corner where they believe in it as well. That it isn't just a tourism hub. It is a self-fulfilling industries of all varying levels and types that can sustain itself here on the coast. It's really inspiring.
Oh, it really is inspiring. And every year, without a doubt, and you just see more and more businesses come to the coast. But what I particularly love is the entrepreneurial spirit that we have, that we go, well, doesn't exist, so therefore I'm going to create it. And people here do. And they just blow your mind. And the thing is too, you may not see these people at the networking events you go to every day, because some of them just get on with business. Some of them choose not to be involved for whatever reasons, and that's okay. But isn't it nice to be able to identify them and tell their story, or to learn more about them? And it could just be that they play only on the world stage. Again, fine. Again, that's fine. But we want to know about you.
They're in some shed at Kunda Park.
I know. It's just mind-blowing, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is. And the more people that, we're trying to, I'm happy to interview anybody around the world, but obviously I much prefer to talk to them face to face, because I feel like you get a more genuine conversation. And so at this stage, we are limited somewhat. We've got a couple of people coming up from Sydney later in the year, but it's convenient to have locals on the show. And it is astounding the depth and the breadth of individuals and hearing their story of success that are all living here on the Sunshine Coast. It is insane. And it's like that, similar to me walking into court, they walk in with sandals and shorts and a t-shirt, and the guy runs a multi-million-dollar company or it's properly impressive.
Don't you love it? I love the fact that exactly that. They can walk in their T-shirt and what have you, or safety boots, of course, most of them, even if they're in Kunda Park.
Yeah.
But it's fantastic that, we have that depth and breadth of incredible talent here on the coast. And I hope you do get to talk to them. I can give you a list of all the winners from the Sunshine Coast Business Awards. That's a great spot. That's a great spot to start.
Yeah.
If you want to talk to amazing talent. But again, the diversity of the industries that we've got here. But again, you know what? Even tourism. And tourism's always been such a big and important part of the Sunshine Coast. Take our business of the year last year, Amaze World, and people might go, well, it's just a tourism destination and an experience. It's way more than that. When you actually talk to Adam, and one of the reasons he was the winner, the problems he overcame and the solutions that he found to taking that place to the next level in terms of putting in systems that help people to book at different times, that solve different problems that they were having about, traffic up Tanawa Drive and all those sorts of things. He's doing great things. If you haven't been there with the kids, you need to go and check it out, because they're doing incredible things for the coast.
Yeah. And one thing that's also impressive is, and when I speak to colleagues of mine or mentors, they're all extremely passionate. They're all very, very successful, crazy successful. They're all so passionate about being here. And they've all been here for years and decades, but they're it's personal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not, well, if we up and moved to Brisbane, we'd probably make an extra zero, but it doesn't matter because they're so passionate about being here.
But it's community. It really is the collaboration, the community. You only have to pick the phone up, and if somebody, you're wanting to know somebody or to connect with somebody, or you're wanting an answer to something, if the person you're ringing doesn't know, they'll be able to ring somebody that does know. And our willingness to help each other succeed, I think, is part of it's in the water here, right? It's just, there's a culture at the coast and you can't explain it. And when I moved from Sydney, I couldn't have explained it to you either in the way it works here. You've just got to embrace it, because once you've got the community behind you, I wouldn't live anywhere else. It really is a special place to live, to grow, to bring your kids up, to work, to have a business. It really is something that Sydney or the other big cities, which are beautiful in their own right, but they just don't have here that we have on the coast.
Okay, a final sort of technical industry question. We all believe we have great businesses on the Sunshine Coast. How, on a PR level, can we convince the major cities and the customers and clients of the major cities to see a business out of the Sunshine Coast as legitimate and as on equal par or better than their local major city business?
That's a really, really interesting question. And, I'm a big supporter of, support local, buy local, do everything local, use local people when you can. Sometimes you may need to use somebody that's not local because of you're wanting a particular result and there's a specialist outside the area. That's cool. From my perspective, we've pitched on some work interstate and we've been out of 50, been shortlisted in top 5. So I know we're certainly holding our own in terms of competing with others we're pitching for work not just in Australia but out of Australia now. And I fully expect that we're going to get some of that work. So I think we've slowly moving beyond that and getting runs on the board and demonstrating the runs on the board. For example, that Qantas 2-page spread that we've got for a client, that demonstrates the fact that you can proactively pitch for a client and get good PR if the story's there, and of course you've got the assets to go with it. I don't know that that's as big a barrier now as it used to be, providing the client, say, if the client wants people to see them on a weekly basis. Well, if the job's big enough, you're going to get in a plane, aren't you? And you're going to go down to Sydney on a weekly basis if you need to. You find ways to overcome potential objections there so that they see you on an equal footing. And if you, at the end of the day, if you can deliver the results, you should be in with an equal chance, one would like to hope.
Yeah, fair play.
But you've also got to deliver to the quality of your Sydney or Melbourne counterparts. Because you can't have it both ways, Richard. You can't say, we're regional, therefore we're a bit more lax, or we're a bit more this or a bit more that, or, we don't call someone back on the same day. Because that doesn't happen in Sydney. If you call someone in Sydney, and I call it the sundowner rule, they're expecting a call back that day. So if you're taking 3 or 4 days to call someone back and you don't get the work, then don't be surprised.
Sure.
So it works both ways.
Yeah. You got to have a high level of expectation.
And customer service and deliver on what you say you're going to deliver, because that's what they're expecting in Sydney and Melbourne. So if you can match the work ethic that your counterparts are doing, shouldn't matter where you're from.
Jen, this has been great. Before you go, fast 5 questions.
Righto. Oh, I forgot fast 5 answers.
What does success mean or look like to you?
Success is a job well done, where at the end of the day, regardless of what I've done, I feel good. And I know I've done the best that I could do.
I like that answer. What does happiness look like? Apart from the John Deere and the chainsaw.
That is happiness. Happiness is friends and family and, sitting in front of my fire with my husband and a glass of red wine. I'm a country girl at heart. I don't need a lot more than that.
You still got horses on the property?
Yep, sure do. One kicked me the other day.
Oh, God.
I've got 3.
Yeah, wow. The most gifted or recommended book to read?
I had to think about this one. The Paradigm Shift is probably a favourite. Don't ask me who the author is because I can't remember. But I was gifted it many years ago and I read it a couple of times, read it again recently. But it's all about changing your views on, this is my interpretation of it. If you've always done things the way you've always done them, but you're not open to new opportunities, then why would you expect anything to change? And it's fictional, but based on a bit of woo-woo, which is not usually me, but an interesting read. Okay, great. 4 people, alive or dead, not friends or family, that you would invite to dinner. Robin Williams would be one of them because everyone needs someone that's going to be funny at the dinner table. Probably not a lot of people know, but I love history, right? And particularly World War II and ancient history. So I'd probably have the Queen, Winston Churchill, and probably Tutankhamun.
Wow, we haven't had an Egyptian god in on that answer.
Just fascinated by the culture.
Fantastic. And then finally, Jen, out of all the people that you've come into touch with and know their story, this is going to be a very harder question than I would have thought, but a person who you think we should interview on the show.
I'm going to just say to you, I will give you the list of all the winners of the Sunshine Coast Business Awards because they're all worth talking to.
Fantastic. Very, very good. Jennifer Swaine, thank you so much for coming onto the show. It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
That was another episode of the Success Times Happiness podcast. Next time you open up social media, turn to the person next to you and tell them all about our show. Until next time, peace.